This is MainStreet with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to MainStreet. Gary Allen with you. Alex Teixeira on the voiceover. Tommy Schitt, he's on the executive producing this afternoon's program, as he always is. I don't give him enough credit for all the work that he does for us, and he's really a hardworking fellow. This afternoon's program is a very interesting one. It's part two from the part one show that we did a while ago back on mental illness, abuse, and suicide. Today, we're going to pick it up when it comes to mental illness, how it affects abuse, and suicide. We're not only going to talk about the effects of what you should look for when you think somebody is in trouble. And please don't say, oh, this person has this problem, therefore they must be mentally ill. No. They may have this and they could be just depressed for a while. And we want to make sure you understand that one or two of these symptoms don't necessarily mean that there's something seriously wrong. But if you see someone with some of the symptoms we're going to be talking about, Lisa Zarcone, who is our guest, who is the author of the wonderful book, The Unspoken Truth. She's also an abuse survivor herself. We'll go over that real quickly. But she'll even tell you, if you see something and you reach out to someone, you might be helping them. You don't want to go too far, though, and you don't want to interfere in someone's life if they're just depressed. So it's sort of like when you think you have a cold or you have the flu. There's symptoms for one and symptoms for the other. But mental illness, abuse go hand in hand, and so does suicide. And believe it or not, COVID had a lot to do with the young people today that have had problems from suicide and mental abuse. Let me just read this to you real fast before I bring Lisa on. Amongst young adults in the United States, 18 to 25, 1 in 3 experience mental illness in their life. 1 in 10 experience serious mental illness in their life. 3.8 million have had serious thoughts of suicide. 3.8 million have had serious thoughts of suicide. 1 in 5 youth today say that the pandemic had serious consequences for them when it came to their mental health as time progressed and the COVID situation alleviated itself and sort of semi went away, although it never truly is. 18% of adolescents have had mental illness problems. 23% of young adults have, and not to mention other people that we will be talking about. There are ethnic reasons for sometimes for someone wanting to commit suicide, where they live. The mental illness is just part of it, as well as the abuse, and one has something to do with the other, obviously. So again, the information we're giving you, be careful with it, because if you see the signs of one, it doesn't mean someone is in a real serious problem. It might be just depression for a day or two, like we all go through for one thing or another. So without further ado, would you please bring on one of my dear friends in the whole world? She is the author of The Unspoken Truth. She's a mental health, but she's a mental health expert, but she's also a child abuse survivor. She knows what it's like to go through this with her family when no one was there at first, and how she got through it, I don't know, but she's a wonderful lady, Miss Lisa Zarcone.
Hi, Gary. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. It's warmer than all blue blazes here in Florida.
It's warm here in Massachusetts, too.
Massachusetts.
Yes, Massachusetts.
Yeah, as my little niece used to say, Massachusetts.
That's beautiful.
Let's go through number one. The last time we did cover the fact that you are an abuse survivor. You had abusive issues in your life because of your mom, who eventually passed away. Your father divorced your mother. Your brother passed away. He was sort of like your guardrail, helping you get through some of these problems. But there wasn't anybody around, even in the local community, to help you. So briefly, tell us how you managed to get past all of that to become the individual you are today.
Yes, that's a whole big loaded question right there. But no, when you think about, back to the beginning, again, like talking about my mother, she had mental health issues and problems. Our home was very unstable. And when we lost my brother at the age of 9 and I was 6, that just opened up everything to a whole nother level. I was definitely left alone with my mom, and my dad couldn't handle the fact that he lost his son and he lost his wife, really, because my mother could never move forward from what happened. Plus, she had extreme mental illness, so she had many things against her. And unfortunately, there was nobody there who really stepped up or stepped in to help. They just felt that old style protocol. What happens in the home stays in the home. The husband takes care of business. Family members don't step in. And unfortunately, because of that, the abuse was long and extensive. And it was very difficult for me growing up. I really had to fight hard and dig deep to get through, all of these awful experiences. I was abused mentally, physically, emotionally, sexually by a second abuser that came into our home. I was preyed upon. So there were so many factors that went into all of that. And when you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier about suicide, I did contemplate suicide. We talked about that before. And,
Mhm.
thank God, by the grace of God, I didn't go through with it. And I'm here today and I'm able to step forward, share my story, and help other people. But it really was a hard road to get here, a lot
Mhm.
of work, a lot of tears. But I did the work and I put in the time. And then that is a really important thing to do when you're going through healing and recovery. You have to put in the time, you have to be kind to yourself and get yourself through it with a lot of help and support.
Well,
So,
something I've never really told many people. My late wife knew about it, and my family knew about it. But at one time, I contemplated suicide too. Now it lasted a total of 5 minutes, but I did contemplate suicide. Things were so bad for me in Chicago, and it was the middle of the winter. And nothing can be worse than if you're depressed and it's the middle of the winter and it's snowing outside. I just came from a job interview where the guy told me that I have a great resume if I wanted to hire a playboy for his wife and family.
wow.
That's how bad it was. I actually went. We lived in the 23rd floor up in Chicago in a high rise, and it had the bay windows. The old fashioned bay windows, two sides and then the front. And I lifted up the window to jump, and my cat Victoria meowed really loud, and I looked back. I closed the window, and that was the last time I ever contemplated any of that. I did go see my local minister at my church, and I got a little bit of counseling. And he said, Gary, what you're going through is not uncommon, particularly in the wintertime, if you're going through other situations in your life. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people when it comes to suicide. But before we get to that, I want to talk about mental illness itself. Now,
Okay.
there are a lot of different uh, reasons for mental illness. There are a lot of categories for mental illness. There are a lot of signs to look for in someone who may be mentally ill or is going through a very bad time. What are some of the signs that you see? I mean, I have a few of them in front of me here. Um Excessive worry is
Mhm.
one thing. Feeling excessive sadness over a long period of time, confused in their thinking, extreme mood changes. Did you prolong strong feelings of irritability and anger, avoiding friends and social activities? And these are just some of the reasons why some people may have mental illness or commit suicide.
Right.
Talk upon that from your own experience as a child advocate as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, mental illness, there's so many facets and pieces to it. There's so many signs and symptoms. And somebody can be born with it. Someone can be born with a chemical imbalance. It could be in the genetics, in the genes. And my mom was one of those people who was born with, mental illness, and it ran in her family. The genes ran deep. So that was one piece to it. But then you add in life stressors, things happen, traumatic experiences, switching of, something that comes into your life and then is gone. There's many factors that bring it together that can cause people to get depressed, or like you said, like the racing thoughts, the high anxiety, and all of that brings you to a point where you are mentally struggling. And it does affect the clarity, your thought process. It affects it deeply. And with some people, it can put you into the big depression to where you feel like you're not yourself anymore. You don't want to socialize, engage, the things you always loved to do, you don't want to do anymore. It even
Yeah.
affects your eating habits, your sleeping habits, all of those things. And then you have the mania where you'll get those highs and lows. Some people, race and they change gears 24/7, boom, 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 keep going. And such a fast, rapid speed. My mother was one of those people. My mother would go from the high to the high to the lowest to the low, and she would cycle so frequently that you couldn't keep up with her. And for people that go through that, they are so internally struggling so badly that they can't get a handle on it. And that's when you look at those things and you see people out there going through these issues and problems. The best thing you can do is offer support, offer, kindness, compassion. You might not always understand the illness and you might not always understand exactly what someone's going through, but you can
Right.
always offer kindness and the understanding the best you can. A little bit of compassion, saying, encouraging somebody to step up and get some help. Remind them they don't have to go through it alone. That, the unfortunate thing, again, going back to my mother, she didn't have that support. Mental illness was frowned upon. This was back in the 70s and the 80s. Nobody talked about it, nobody dealt with it, and she had very little support to get her through it. So we rode that roller coaster, and it was a very difficult one to ride. That is for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, the question I guess the question I have more than anything else is you have to be careful. By the way, Lisa Zarcone is my guest. If you want to get in touch with her, go to her website, lisazarcone.net. It's right here in the bottom of the screen. Also, a reminder that this show is also on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on DBTV, and we're seen worldwide. And thank you, all of you out there who have been watching the shows. We're getting some great numbers. Thank you. I have some wonderful guests coming up in the future, and I just wanted to put that in there. But Lisa Zarcone is our guest today. We're talking about abuse, mental illness, and suicide. Lisa, where can people, if people see something, okay, like if somebody had seen me walking home that day in Chicago, they wouldn't have known anything was really wrong, even though I was crying like a baby. I really was. I was so frustrated, with the fact I couldn't find work in Chicago. I was new to Chicago, and people don't trust people when you first move into a new place. But if you see something out there, you have to be careful how you reach out to that person. And also, where do people go if they want to get some information so they understand correctly what they're doing or not doing, right or wrong, so they can help somebody correctly without messing up the situation even worse?
Right. I mean, that's a hard one in a sense, because if someone's a stranger and you see them, say, crying or struggling, a lot of people have become so desensitized that they are not willing to go up and ask that person, "Hey, are you okay?" And that's
Mm,
okay to do. You can ask somebody without being too intrusive about, what their scenario is in their story, but you can say, "Are you okay? I see that you're upset. Is there something I can do to help? Is there somebody I can call?" Just very keeping it very light and very simple, but just making that connection, giving some eye contact, and letting that person know that, hey, I see your struggle. You're validating their feelings. Like that day you're walking, if somebody saw you, crying intently and said, "Hey, is there something I can do for you? Is there someone, I can
yeah.
reach out to help you?" That could have changed your whole demeanor, even if they didn't make a phone call. It's just the fact that somebody acknowledged you, somebody validated that you were in a situation of feeling awful. And you're right, many people are walking around and you would never know that they could be contemplating suicide. You may never know
Yeah.
that they are so deeply depressed, because people do hide things well. But we can make ourselves aware in many ways. When you say like getting more information, learning about it, you can look up things online, like the Mental Health Association. You can get onto their websites and just read a little more about what is mental illness, how does it affect people, and where are places people can go. There's, every city, every state has their local, facilities that can help
Hmm.
people when they're struggling. And honestly, worst case scenario, you would want to see somebody go to the hospital for that.
What would be some of the key places to look for? In other words, a company or a corporation or a healthcare organization, what would be some of the key phrases that they would use in letting people know that they're there for that particular issue or problems, or all three?
Right. So like you have like if you went online and you found NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. So right there you can get on that website. Just that one alone, they have so much information. They have people that you could reach out to, all free. You know, you could connect with somebody and they can help guide you in your area to get you to the right points or places to find. A lot of mental health associations are, I mean, they're all over. They're again in every state in the different cities, so you can always reach out that way. And
Hmm.
honestly, if nothing else is working, dial 988. You can text 988, you can dial 988. It's the suicide hotline, but it's not just for suicide. It is to help people get to where they need to be. Give them the support, give them information to help them to get the help that they need. So there are options out there. And I do always go back to awareness and education, because in our communities, the more we share, the more we put stuff out there, we're
Yeah.
teaching people, we're giving them options. And there's just so much out there that you can do to help somebody. And you have to be willing to. And a lot of people are either scared to step up to do it, feel like it's not their place to step up to do it. Like you said, you have to be careful. You don't want to overstep your boundaries. But at the
Yes.
same time, if you see somebody's, in such a state, doing nothing is not the right thing either.
No, that's for sure. Let me ask you something. Have we become emotionally hardened as a society, so much so that it's easier for us to look away, not get involved? Who cares? That's your problem. It's not mine. Uh, I can't do anything for you. I got enough problems of my own. Have we become that hardened as a society emotionally that we just turn and look the other way?
I believe that many people do look the other way. There's still great people out there, don't get me wrong, because there's still people that are willing to jump in, lend a helping hand whenever possible, and step up and do those things. But I do
Right.
believe as a society as a whole, we have gotten harder. And also, I think people are afraid to step in because the rate of violence has gone up so
Yes.
immensely, and with the gun stories and shootings and all those things that are happening out there in our world, people I think are afraid that, hey, I'm going to say something, this person's going to do something and hurt me. And I think that's made people a little bit more scared to do so, or a little more skeptical to step up. And
Hmm.
it's unfortunate because there are so many people in need, from children to all ages, all walks of life. There are people struggling everywhere. And if more people did have the strength and courage to step up and ask the questions and try to help, you might see a lot of different things, end in different ways in a more positive way.
How has and this comes from a friend of mine. How has the 24/7 news cycle not helped in mental health, with the lies coming from all directions and the BS that you find on the internet from kooks and crazy people who
Yes.
who speculate and want to say? I mean, I was at the grocery store the other day, okay, to give you an example, and I was checking out of the line here in Palm Bay, where I live, that thriving, beautiful metropolis where the all night diner does close at 12 noon. And the girl said to me, Gary, did you hear? I said, did I hear what? And I hadn't been watching the news all morning. I was on the phone before I went to the grocery store. She said, the president fired Pam Bundy. I went, oh, really? So when I got to my car, I turned on the news radio. There was no mention of it anywhere. I mean, it's just incredible to me, the lies. And the funny thing is, when I watch some of these newscasters, both on the left and the right, mostly on the right, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's mostly a lot of people on the right, especially a certain particular network. They lie, and they know they lie, and they don't care, and they build it up because they want they want ratings, and they don't realize the consequences of what they do, because somebody's going to go out and kill somebody. I mean, I'm not talking about
They
what
put
happened.
people into a state of panic. They put people into a
Yes.
state of fear. And the news has been, you know, intense with what they say and what they do and the lies that come out, and then people are bantering. And of course with social media, people have access to speak all over the place, and then now people are they're being pitted against each other. And you
Yep.
do have to really do your research when you read the news and you hear these stories, and weed through the truth and the lies. Honestly, what makes me really upset about a lot of the news stuff is what people focus on. You're focusing on things that are not important, especially in my eyes, because here we are, there's so many stories of children out there who are being murdered by their own family members, stories that are being put to the wayside, that are just like little blips that you get about it and then it's gone. But we're going
Yeah.
to hear about all of these lies that are going to create drama, they're going to create divide, all of the above. And it does bring on violence, more violence. And
Yes,
it's
as a
when
matter of fact, some of my friends out in California and some of my friends in New York and around the country now are suddenly saying, no more. You can watch a little bit of TV. This is to their children and even to young adults. They're not watching as much news anymore, and they're not even going on the internet so much anymore. And they're finding that their mental health, their well-being, their thinking is changing, and they're suddenly going, wait a minute, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean you're my enemy. And I think that has brought upon a lot of mental health. I remember growing up down in Hollywood, Florida, where I grew up, and there was a group of men. Our school was one of the first to be integrated high schools, and for the first time, the rednecks, and I can use that term, the rednecks from Davie, Florida, and
right,
they were literally back then rednecks. They're a lot better off now today they were. And then the kids, the black kids that came from the Dania area, first time clashing together going to school. We had race riots. And the
right,
reason and I said to both one day, I said, why are you fighting? What are you
right.
fighting about? Well, my daddy says they don't have a right to be existing. And the black kid says, well, we don't like being pushed around. Well, that's what's going on now in our society. People
Right.
yelling and screaming, the migrant workers, they're doing this, they're doing that. And then people begin to hate and they begin to and that's where mental illness pops in the
Well,
picture.
you know what it is? It's mental distress.
Yeah.
That's a good term to put, because you can have sane people, that are doing their work, they're living their lives, they're pretty level minded, and then all of a sudden all this stuff is being thrown at them from all over the place, and that's when you get mental distress, which brings on high anxiety, which brings on the overthinking, and then that puts you into a whole nother realm, because now your thinking pattern is switching gears, your sleep pattern is switching gears, you're off kilter, you can't find your balance. And once you get to that point, that's
Yeah.
when you are teetering, and you're teetering with high anxiety, you're teetering with depression, and you're also teetering with high aggression, internal
Yes.
aggression, and people are lashing out. And it does come from all of these aspects of life that we are getting, it's all getting thrown at us in the news and social media. And that brings to the part, like with suicide rates are up, and a lot of that has to do with all of this stuff in the news and on the internet. They're pushing people to the limits. They're pushing people to the point of
Right.
no return. And that's where we need to start pulling it back. And you're right. Kids do not need to be on social media and have TV 24/7. It gives you what they call brain rot,
It
brain
does.
fog,
Did you
because
know that?
they're not thinking.
Did you know this, Lisa, that every day 28 veterans commit suicide?
I've,
Every day,
I've heard.
28 veterans commit suicide, which to me is shameful that veterans get to that point. Now, there are a lot of reasons for it. I mean,
Yes.
people don't realize, Lisa, and I think this is where mental illness comes into the focus where people don't realize. They see two arms, they see two legs, they see two eyes, they see this, they see that, and they go, oh, he's just feeling a little down.
Mhm.
No, he's not. You come back as a veteran. Tommy was in a war. I was in a war. You don't get away from it. So up here, this
Right.
is the easiest muscle in the body to get confused and stay confused. And if it's been warped by, you're never going to be anything. Who do you think you are? You're going to be somebody. Oh, come on. You're not going to be anything. You're just a da 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 da, and this, that, and the other, you know. I mean, to me, it's just brutality that we do to each other, and it's so despicable and disgraceful as a country and as a world. What we do to each other, we kill each other with with,
It's true.
with the
With
verbalage
words.
and the physical
Yeah.
and abuse. Yes.
Words hurt more than anything. When you think of abuse, when you think of the physical abuse, yes, it hurts. It physically hurts you, it damages you. But mental abuse, emotional abuse, that's where it all sits in here, like you said.
Yeah.
And you hold on to it, and then your body holds on to it. And when that happens, then you are really being affected. And words can bring a person down. I was told I was worthless over and over again by my sexual abuser. He told me I was garbage. He told me that
Ah,
all these things. And I was a young girl who was already damaged from dealing with my mom and dealing with the mental and emotional piece to abuse. Now you have somebody beating you down even more. And where does that put you? It puts you
mm.
with zero self esteem. That's where that puts you. And you don't feel like you're worth anything. And
And I also find suicide comes from people who live alone, people who are elderly or
yeah,
even young, who live alone. They don't have a whole lot of friends. That happens when you move to a new city, or go into a new company or whatever the case may be. Now, not in every case, but people who live alone. Now, I live alone, and there are moments, I'll be perfectly honest with you, when I'm like, what am I going to do? Where am I going
yeah,
to go? Because where I live, there's really, I'm sorry to say, there's really no culture. There's no museums. There's a
right.
symphony orchestra that performs every once in a great while. But the bottom line is, living alone, going through a wintertime, living alone in an apartment, that also confuses the brain. That
It does.
also plays tricks on you.
Yeah, and yes, and you have to be really mindful of that for yourself. That if you are living alone, you have to find outlets for yourself. I tell people all the time, go to a library, go to a local library, look at things, read things. They have all these free activities that you can be involved in. And
Yeah.
it's just a way to change your scenery, see people, talk to people. It doesn't have to be some deep conversation. It's just the point that you are actually engaging with somebody.
Hmm.
My mom talked about that a lot. So my mom was in a nursing home, and you know what she talked a lot
Hmm.
about was the
What?
physical contact. No one hugged her. How many people out there are not being hugged? How many people are not being told that they are loved or cared for? And
Mm.
that's when you get into all these situations of depression, suicidal thoughts. Yes. And the winter blues, when you talk about the winter, you're locked in the house or your apartment. You're not getting fresh air. You are in this stagnant environment. And that does mess with the psyche. And again, when I do my presentations and I do my workshops, when I talk about being mentally healthy, I always
Hmm.
say, even if it's a cold day, get outside, even if it's for 5 minutes 10 minutes, let the sun hit your face, feel that breeze. All of those things redirect the brain. It redirects the brain and it brings you back to baseline. So if you are struggling and feeling like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
nothing's
Yeah.
working, change your scenery. Change your
Yep.
scenery. Even if you're in a building, go walk up and down the stairs if you can. Take the elevator, go up and down. Walk the perimeter of a building on the outside to come back in. Just something that just changes it up for just a little bit. And that all does help with your mental health.
Yeah, and we're talking to Lisa Zarcone. She's an abuse survivor. She's an author of a wonderful book, which is the title of "The Unspoken Truth," which is a story about her life and how she survived it. You can also get a hold of Lisa right there on the screen, lisazarcone.net. If you have any questions, you can go to her website and get in touch with her. She will certainly reach out to you and help you in any way she can. She's a child abuse advocate, and she's gone to the courts many, 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 many times. Let's talk about something that a lot of people have been talking about lately, and uh, naturally so. We have not really fully recovered mentally from COVID, have we?
No, no, we have not. And you're seeing the effects of that now. Again, when you're talking about mental health, you're talking about suicide rates, but also when you think about how people were shut in and they didn't have socialization, excuse me, and they become like what do you want to say the word is? You're just, anxiety and being in public, anxiety with feeling like that you can have the conversations that you normally would have had before. You are seeing those effects now that people have gone back to work, the children have gone back to school. Educationally, the children were dropped behind because they were not getting, the proper education because everything was remote. Kids struggled with remote learning. My own kids struggled tremendously with remote learning. And now it's catch up time. Now we're trying to catch up. So we're trying to
Yeah.
catch up on all of these pieces. And it has definitely affected our society in so many ways. People have like lost their skills, their ability to speak to somebody, their ability to hold a conversation and feel good about having a conversation. Eye contact. How many people do you see that do not want to give you eye contact? Eye contact is so important. It lets people know that you are listening, you are hearing them, and you are seeing them. And these are all the skills that have dropped to the wayside because of COVID, and we are still trying to regroup and catch up.
Do you know what I think is the worst thing that ever happened to the word communication?
What?
Cell phones.
Well, cell phones are another thing. People are in their phones texting, and I can't say that I don't because I do as well. But I've really worked hard on trying to put the phone down, trying to really be in the moment if something's happening, and not look at it because once you start looking at it, it's a thing. You keep going, you keep going, you keep going. Before you know, time has gone by. I recently just read an article about that, about people losing relationships because they're out to dinner or they're out places together, and here's this couple and they're both on their phone, not looking up at each other, not engaging in conversation, not spending quality time, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a stranger. You're two
Hmm.
strangers who do not even know how to communicate with one another anymore. So yes, the cell phone is another thing, and for our youth, the cell phone is a huge thing because they're so connected to it that
Hmm.
they actually have had kids go to therapy to learn how to disconnect from their cell phones. That's how
Wow.
addicting, and that's the
Wow.
truth. That is, it's so addicting that kids have been in therapy to pull them away from the cell phone.
Wow. I was thinking as you were talking, what if COVID had occurred, and I'm a little bit older than you, uh, during the time before there was a such thing as computers and cell phones?
You know,
Huh? Where would the learning be then? And how about the kids even during COVID now
yes,
that couldn't afford PCs or cell
right.
phones or anything? What happens to them? Are they so far behind now? And that also brings on mental stress,
Of course it
mental
does.
problems. I mean, what do we
You know,
how do we answer these kids?
right. And going to your first question about like if this happened long before cell phones and all those things, honestly, I think the kids would have been better off because back in the day, kids went
Hmm.
outside, kids socialized, kids played, kids, there was groups of kids enjoying their time together.
Yeah, but
They,
if
the
you're
educational piece.
but
Oh, I
with
know.
COVID, you were restricted. You had to stay inside.
Right. But then you were able to get outside, even if you stood 6 feet apart, you can
Yeah.
still get outside and
Yeah,
do
that's true.
things.
Yeah,
And
that's
I mean,
true.
the educational piece, sure, that would have definitely caused a lot of difficulties because, of course, school was basic back then. And then if you take that away completely, where would the children have been? So, and then now stepping forward, the kids did have the social media, but that social media did a lot of damage. So much bullying going on, the
Yeah.
suicide rates again going up. So now here's another thing to add into the mix of all this. So many kids and young adults have been on TikTok. So TikTok is the big rave. Everybody wants to be TikTok famous, YouTube famous. It was before that, but now it's TikTok. Everybody is out there doing their thing, and you're seeing a high rate of suicide in TikTok influencers because
Really?
yes,
Really?
look it up. You got to look. It's the truth. And every day I read the news and see different things. I'm seeing a lot of people who are TikTok influencers who have taken their own lives. That they were battling their own depression or whatever was going on in their world, and then they're out there in social media and they're not getting the reaction that they're hoping for, or they're getting bullied because again, our society is a very judgmental society. You put yourself out there for millions of people to view and see what you're doing, there's going to be haters. There's going to be naysayers. There's going to be people who are going to try to bring you down for whatever
Yep.
reason they have going on. that brings on mental distress, that brings on depression, that brings on, unfortunately, suicide. But you are seeing a lot of influencers that are committing suicide because of all the pressure.
Wow. You also brought up something too, and it was bullying. And
Mm.
I've always believed that bullying brings on so much stress in someone's mind. I had someone who bullied me in high school. Now, that kid, by the way, the night that we graduated from high school, he didn't. He
Yeah.
didn't. He was in back in the auditorium, and his name was Tommy Thompson, and
Oh,
he was a goofy looking kid, but he was one of these Davy rednecks, and he
right.
just thought he was going to pick on the little Jew boy from Hollywood Hills, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the neighborhood I lived in, and he kept every day he would hit me, hit me, hit me, hit me, hit me. Finally, a teacher caught him, and they suspended him for a week. Came back, hitting me again, blah blah blah. But he never graduated from high school, and he was a bully. He
Mm.
was a first class bully. I
Yes.
ran into him in Vietnam
Oh,
where
wow.
I was serving. They wanted me to take a body home. It was him.
Oh, my
They
gosh.
he was I finally got to the bottom of it. He panicked in combat and they shot him in the back to keep him shut.
Wow.
He was not mentally stable and the army took him in anyway. But bullying,
Yeah.
bullies have a hard time as they get older because they don't know how to stop being bullies.
It's true. And most bullies, if you look at the bigger picture, have had things happen in their lives that have brought them to that point. You really have to look at that piece because bullies out there have really had their own issues prior to becoming the bully. And it's a
Yeah.
way of gaining control in some fashion in their life. And bullying is huge. Bullying has brought many people, unfortunately, to suicide. Many teenagers have committed suicide due to excessive bullying. And when you look at the social media piece on that, so
Yeah.
back in the day, yes, you went to school, you're doing your things, you kids get bullied. And but when you went home, you were away from it. You had a break from it. Now with social media, there's no break from it. When kids are bullying, they're bullying 24/7. You don't get a break from it. And then kids are trying to fight back or connect or do something to get, to get back at them, and then it escalates. And then more
Mhm.
people get in there and they keep pushing the envelope to the point where that person who's being bullied unfortunately will think about suicide, and many have gone
Yeah.
through with it, unfortunately,
And
and it's
and 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 and, and I don't even know what the statistics are. I used to have them for LGB children, people
yes.
growing up, but I imagine the suicide rate is quite high.
Well, the suicide rate is high all over the place, and yes, the community, all these different communities do have their numbers, but all over the place because there's no break from anything. You're constantly being hit with something. Your mind is constantly going. You don't get those mental health breaks, and it pushes people to those points.
Yeah, and I would imagine, my niece was a school teacher, and my brother too, down in Dade County, Florida. And I remember him saying how many times kids would just walk up to another kid and beat the living snot out of them for no reason at all. And then when you got to the bottom of the problem, when you called in the mom or the dad or both of them, and sometimes it was just one parent that would come to the school, you'd find out why they were the way they are because the
Right.
parent was an obnoxious human being and
Yeah.
didn't want to take responsibility. My baby doesn't do nothing. My
Right.
child doesn't do anything. How dare you do that? And particularly, and I hate to say this, but particularly amongst the Hispanics in Miami, particularly if they were Cuban, they're real macho. They're
Yeah.
real macho, and fighting to them is like me
Well,
drinking
and that
water.
that is when you talk about society and when you talk about cultures. In different
Yeah,
cultures, you're going to see different things. But if you have to think about the bully, yes, it's a learned behavior. Where are
yeah.
they seeing it? Where is it happening to them that they feel that they have to step up and be the bully? I can tell you a
Right.
really quick story. When I was in school, it was junior high school, and my abuser, my sexual abuser, was a little bit older than me. He was in school with me as well. We were in the
Hmm.
cafeteria one day, standing there, and there was this young little boy. I say young boy. He was, our age, but he was, he had issues. Like he was definitely struggled with learning disabilities. Standing there, very meek and mild. And I used to be very kind to him, and I said hi to him as we're standing in the lunch line. And my abuser looked at me and said, "Because you talked to him, watch what's going to happen." And he beat that boy up so badly. I was so horrified and so devastated to watch this that he took this young man and beat him until he was bleeding before they can get him off of him. And he was, my abuser was screaming and he was blaming me. This is your fault. I did this because you said hi to him.
What
Because
happened to your abuser, by the way? I've never asked you.
my abuser committed suicide. My
Oh,
abuser
good.
went on, so my abuser went on to abuse many women, abused his own wife, his own children. He had more than one marriage. He had many children. Each child was abused in many ways, physically, mentally, sexually. He did a
Hmm.
lot of damage. He did amazing amount of damage along the way, and then he decided that he was done and he committed suicide.
Um, Something that we touched on the first part of this program. Lisa Zarcone joins me. She's an author and advocate for children, for child abuse, and for mental health and suicide. We touched on this. I asked this question of you before. There's where you can get a hold of Lisa. Um, are there just some people that are born that are just wired wrong, and there's nothing you can do to ever straighten them out?
That is true. There are people who are born, the genetics, again, talking about the genetics. People are born sick. It's a chemical imbalance. It's something in the brain. There's something that shifts, something that happens. And yes, some people go to the extreme. My mom was extremely mentally ill. She had a really, really hard time. And when she took herself off her medication, there was no stopping her. She just, the highs, the lows, the mania, the abuse, the mouth on her, the changing of personalities. It was all of
Mhm.
that. But yes, some people are born sick. Some people are born with a mental illness, and if it's not addressed, and if that, say, that young adult, that child is being abused themselves, it's going to fester. It's going to enhance. If someone who is born sick is not treated for any of their illnesses or struggles, it will just
Mhm.
progressively get worse. And people do, again, reach the point of no return where they do things that are irreversible.
Yeah. Are there certain parts of the world where suicide is a little more that happens more often than say somewhere else? Now, I know that in Hawaii, the suicide rate is very high.
So Alaska
Um,
as well.
yeah, but I mean, are there other places throughout the world that you know of that where the suicide rate is very? I mean, it's got to be in particular where people are impoverished
Well,
and they
definitely.
know they're never going to get out of it.
Right, definitely. Impoverished, war-torn countries, all these things that people are dealing with. There's a point where they probably feel that they're hopeless. It's hopeless for them, and the best thing they can do is just, take their life and go be at peace. And unfortunately, that's a sad reality that people do get to that point. Environmental dysfunction. That's really what that's about. When you have such
Hmm.
a dysfunctional environment, such a what's the word thinking of? I'm thinking of, just again, with the war torn countries and those things, the poverties. It's just so depressing and so hard and so devastating. The trauma that comes with all of that, the daily trauma, it beats people down, and they're not getting obviously any support. So what
Yeah.
happens? It just, unfortunately, they go down that rabbit hole.
And you wonder why they want to come to America where things are relatively calm in comparison to where they've been as they come up through Mexico, Central America, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. And I would also imagine, and we haven't touched on this in the last program or this one, but inner city, growing up in the inner city, it's either gangs, drugs, or somehow you escape it. And I'm
Uh,
so always admiring those young people who have had less advantages than I have had and have
right.
made so much out of their life. And it's so wonderful to see their dedication and their persistence and their discipline of themselves to get themselves up and
Yes.
out and get away from there and helping others as they do. And I'm not just talking about athletes and stuff like that. People are saying, oh,
Right.
well, sure, athletes. No, there are a lot of inner city children that are born black,
Yes.
white, Jewish kids, whatever, that
Right.
that pick themselves up. But I would imagine the suicide rate and the mental illness in inner city has got to be high as well.
It is. It's through the roof because you have inner city kids who feel like there's no way out. They're living the cycle. And the cycle just continues generation after generation. They're watching it, they're living it, they're seeing it. I have to say that when I see youth pushing to do differently, pushing to get out of where they are, a lot of that comes from two different things. Two things: being in a mentorship situation to where kids are
Yeah.
in programs before and after school. They're being mentored. They're being told the things that they should be hearing at home that they're not. And
Yeah.
education, when you have young kids who are pushing themselves to educate themselves so they know that they're going to get out of high school, they're going to graduate, they're going to go to college, they're going to make something of themselves, they are going to break the cycle. And that really comes from a strong mindset, that mindset to want change, to want different. Kids need programs. Inner city youth need so many programs to keep them off the streets, to teach them different ways of thinking, because when they go home, they're going home to a completely dysfunctional environment where their surrounding family members and friends all have a certain way of thinking. And if you don't break that way of thinking, nothing changes and the cycle never breaks.
Yeah, and the problem is in inner city, people are afraid to speak up about violence and problems in their communities because they could end up dead.
Well,
I
yes,
mean,
and that's again when it comes back to old school protocols. You know, what happens in the home stays in the home. What happens in this inner city stays in the inner city. We don't
mhm,
speak of it. We don't step up and try to change it. You know, and the more people continue to think that way, nothing ever changes. So when you have youth that to see it in a different light, and they're like, "No, I want out of this. I want better. I deserve better." And when you're teaching kids those skills in a school setting, an after school program, sports, all those things, and you tell these kids, you're worth it. You're worthy of these good things. You have to
mhm,
fight for it, yes, but you are worthy, and keep pushing forward. And when kids switch the mindset, that's when you see the ones that buck the system, the ones that push forward, the ones that make it. And it's not an
mhm.
easy road because there's just so much static. It's not an easy road, but it is attainable.
Lisa Saccone is my guest. She's an author and advocate for children, adults, when it comes to mental illness, suicide, and abuse. I want to talk about a different kind of abuse that we have hardly ever touched on, and that's nursing home abuse.
Oh.
And uh, what do you call them when it's not a nursing home, but it's when
Assisted
they
living.
can live assisted living? Yeah. Um, you see it every once in a while, in particular if there's a hurricane that's come into the community and you find out that 65 people died in a nursing home because the staff just up and left.
Mhm.
And the facilities were horrible to begin with. And I can testify to that, having seen it in my own life with my own parents and with other friends who have had their family in nursing homes, maybe temporarily, maybe for a long term. Um, the people that work in these nursing homes, generally speaking, are underpaid, highly unqualified to be there to begin with. They're working with people that are, for all intents purposes, they're not. The assisted living facilities, the people there have a few dollars, so they're not necessarily mentally ill. But there are parts of these facilities where they do have Alzheimer's patients, and they
Exactly.
do have patients who maybe do get mentally ill because you're stuck in a place
Right.
and all the time. Talk about what you have seen or what you know about these types of abuses that go on in these facilities.
You know, there is a lot of abuse that goes on in these facilities. And I did see it firsthand because my mom spent many years in nursing homes. And I've had my mom pulled from certain nursing homes because they were just so horrendously horrible. The,
Hmm.
the the living conditions were disgusting. I've made many complaints. I've written to the state. I've gone to people. I've because this was down in Connecticut. My mother was
Yeah.
in Connecticut, and some of the nursing homes there alone were really horrific. And you do see that abuse. And of course, when you think about somebody who is into that type of job, who wants to prey on the weak, wants to prey on the sick, that is like an open opportunity for them to get in there because they're not being watched. They're behind closed doors. They could be a CNA. They're helping wash somebody up. They're helping, change somebody. This is
Hmm.
all opportunity for a predator to come in and hurt somebody and to sexually abuse somebody, or even being violent with a patient who can be combative if you don't have the proper skill set to do so. But with that being said, I've seen many, many incredible people work in these facilities that do love their patients. I watched it with my own mother. My mother was a very difficult patient. Believe me, she was difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
people were very kind to her and they loved her. And when my mom did pass away, they were crying. They
Mm-hmm.
cried. They were in the
Mm-hmm.
room. And this one nurse who loved my mother, she was from, I think, Barbados, if I'm not mistaken. But she came in and she sang in her language this beautiful song that they sing when someone that their family members pass away. And everybody came in and stood around and we all had a moment of silence. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, how powerful is that? That you have this many caring and loving people. And so you do see that, but like you're saying, what you do see, there's a lot of abuse out there, and it does come from people who are not qualified to have these positions. And you're right, they're underpaid. People who work with, someone who's sick and CNAs and all of those things, they're all underpaid for what they do and what they have to deal with. And
Yeah.
yes, abuse happens. And again, just like children are preyed upon, the elderly are preyed upon.
Yeah. And the administrators of some of these facilities, they know what's going on. They don't care because the
Many
money
of them
washes away the guilt.
Again,
It's like,
desensitized. Think about that. They all
yeah,
become desensitized. And you're right. It's about the money. It's about how many patients can we bring in. Now we have all these patients. Now we're bringing in people to help to work, not qualified to do this type of work, but they're bringing in to have able bodies in there. And if you
mhm,
have somebody who's struggling with their own mental illness or a predator, this is like the perfect place for them to get in there and harm innocent people. It does
yeah,
happen. Yes.
yeah, exactly. We've got about 10 minutes to go because you've got to skedaddle. You got to go off with your little ones,
I
although
do.
they're
It
not
seems like
little.
no, but it
They're
seems
not,
like there's always something going on. Like I told you, my life is 24/7. There's something happening. Things come up all the time. I
yeah.
wear many hats and I go through my days just doing everything that has to be done. And then when I sit down at night, I just like go, oh my goodness, I can't believe I got all that accomplished.
Have your kids ever come home to you, your kids, your children, come
Yes.
home to you or your husband or friends and they say, we think there's something going on down here with so and so and so and so. Mom, can you look into this for us?
Yes, I have had that happen. I've had that happen with my own children. I've had that happen with my grandchildren. And, of course, you have to get the information, find out what's happening, and offer help the best you can. Ask the questions. Listen, I always say it, see something, say something. Never be afraid to ask the questions because by asking those questions, you could be saving a life. And if
Hmm.
you're wrong, you might be wrong, but you know what? What if you're right? What if something is happening and you didn't say anything and nobody else said anything? Then all of a sudden, here it is on the news, something devastating happened, and then someone steps forward after the fact and says,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, I did see this," or "Oh, this." So yes, I've had people bring things to my attention in many different aspects of my life, and I have stepped up and did ask the difficult questions.
And what have you found when you go to court? Because I know you go to court for child abuse. What have you found with the parents or the grandparents or whoever's taking care of the children? What have you found the reason for the abuse or the bullying or whatever the case may be that's going on? What do you generally find? Is there a common denominator?
There's so much that goes into that. It really comes down to a dysfunctional environment, dysfunctional family home. That could be because of poverty. That could be because of mental illness. That could be because of drugs and alcohol. There's so many factors that go into it. But when you talk about how does it all fall apart? Why does it fall apart? And why are children being abused? It really comes down to a dysfunctional environment. There's no
Hmm.
stability, and then things just get out of hand. And one thing leads to another. It could start out with verbal abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse. All these things start happening, bringing unsafe people into the home. That's what happened to me. My mom brought many unsafe people into the home. They preyed upon me. When you have a dysfunctional environment and people are inviting in regards to drugs or mental health, now family members are going to be preyed upon, especially the children. There's so many
Hmm.
facets to that. But what I do see, there are a lot of parents that just have never learned how to be a good parent, and that's from a cycle. That's the generation prior. They never learned those skills. And because of that, they didn't put their children first. There was other factors happening. So it really comes down to the home environment and how dysfunctional it can be.
Yeah, it's like my mother used to say, children having children.
It's
You
true.
know,
Yes.
you
And
know.
if again, think about that. A child having a child with no support, with no skills, with no teachings, what is that young person going to do? They're going to struggle. They're going to
Hmm.
make mistakes. If they're having their own issues, say again back to drugs or alcohol or their own mental health problems that are not being addressed, where is it going to fall onto? It's going to fall onto the child.
Yep. Lisa, before we've got about 5 minutes to go, wrapping this up, people see something, they need to do something, but they need to be careful because
Yes,
sometimes they may see something that really isn't what they might think it is. But if
that's
people
true.
have questions, people need answers. Where do they go? Who do they speak to? Do they call the police? Do they go online? Do they go to a counselor? Who and where do people go to if they think they see a problem and they know that they need to get help for someone?
Right, and there's definitely different ways of doing that. It really depends on the situation. If something's happening in a school environment, you can contact the school principal and speak to them. If someone's suspecting child abuse, you can call the child abuse hotline and say something is happening. There needs to be a wellness check. So
Yeah.
this child needs to be checked on and see what's happening. If it's something that you feel is violence, you can go to the police and say again, this person needs a wellness check. There's something happening. We're seeing bruises. We're seeing this. We're hearing screaming. All you can go different avenues with that. If you want to go to some type of like again a mental health center and voice your worries and concerns, you can do that as well. So it
Hmm.
depends really on the situation. Who and what and how it's all happening, but there are options, and it's always good to ask the questions and put the information out there. There's always 800 numbers to call to push forward to say, hey, can we really have this person checked on? Can we have this child checked on or this family checked on? So there are many avenues. The thing that I will tell people all the time, please don't just do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please just
Absolutely.
don't do nothing. At least ask questions. At least try to get somebody else involved the best that you can. Just don't leave it to the wayside, because again, you hear these tragic stories in the news every single day, and then people step up after the fact to say, oh well, I did see this or I did hear that. Why didn't you ask the questions? Why didn't you step forward?
Right.
People need to be able to have that strength and courage to step forward.
She is Lisa Zarcone. She's an author. She's an advocate. She's also a dear friend, and I'm so jealous of her husband. It's insane. She's also the author of The Unspoken Truth, the story of her life of abuse as a teenager and growing up and marrying a wonderful gentleman, having wonderful children, grandchildren. I hard to believe that she's a grandmother. I don't believe that. For all the money in the world, she's a dear friend to me. It's been a lot of years since she was on, but this I was so glad we were able to get two shows on, and hopefully the response will be just as good as it was before. And I'm looking forward to having you back on at some point or another. Um, LisaSarcone.net is where you can get a hold of her. And she's an absolutely wonderful person. And I thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, Lisa, to join us again for part two of this. It will be running up on YouTube in just a couple of days. It will also be on DBTV at 7 p.m. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow night or next Tuesday night, but it will be on at some point, part one and then part two. And it's so chock full of knowledge for all of you out there. And if you see something, do something about it. Like Lisa says, it's so vitally important.
It is
We live in
violent.
such a we live in such a mixed up world, and things being thrown at us left and right. We don't know who to believe. This is a liar. You're my enemy. This and that. And no wonder our brains are all scrambled, and we're fighting and hating each other just because some of my best friends are opposite of what I am politically. I don't hate them. I think they're misguided, but I don't hate them.
You know,
I think.
what you can say is when you send people out into the world, just go forward with some kindness and compassion. You're not always going to understand somebody's issues or problems. You're not going to understand their journey, but you
No.
can offer a smile. You can offer a kind word. It's
Yep.
it's it's free. You know what I mean? It's just free stuff that you could put out there. A
Yeah.
positive just a positive compliment to somebody. And just those small things just makes life a little better, because it is hard out there in this world. There is so much divide. And
Yep.
if we don't come together and try to be kind to one another, then nothing changes. So
Absolutely.
on that note, I want to thank you so much for having me. I'm excited it's getting onto TV. We're going to be on TV together here. I think that's wonderful. And
Absolutely.
I hope people, listen in and get something good from it. Visit my website, lisazarcone.net. I answer everybody who writes to me. So please contact me if you have questions, you want to talk about anything. I'm always available. So thank you, Gary, so much.
Oh, you're welcome, my love, and give my best to your family and
I
to
will.
all of you out there who's joined us for this particular program. Thank you very, very much. Until next time, Gary Allen here. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take care of all of us. We have to.
This is Main Street with Gary Allen.
All right, Lisa, you go. Go. You got to be with your kids.
And I just want to say thank you again. This was great. I look forward to seeing it out there, and I will push it out there again.
All right, young lady. God bless you.
You too. You take care.